welcome to Developing and Managing a Successful Internship Program. You're our MCN 2021 session. So we're very happy to have you all here. And we hope this will be kind of a collaborative session where we share some perspectives from our side, and then we work together to co-create some new knowledge as we go through the presentation to the end. So let's introduce ourselves. So you can have the next slide. So my name is Caroline Colbert. I've been working in museums for a little bit now, a little more than 13 years. I've been supervising interns for a long time, and I actually started out as an intern in the museum world. So I got my first gig that way. So I'm very passionate about making these opportunities available. I'm currently the Director of Communication Engagement at the Guns Gallery at Kenyon College. So I help supervise a very large team of undergraduate interns, about 60 a year we hire, and they are all paid internships at our gallery, and they work in every facet of museum work with us. So I'd like to give a visual description of myself. I'm a middle-aged white woman with pretty light skin. I have long dark hair that's kind of curly. I wear glasses, and I have a dark dress on. And just to give you a little window into my personality, I feel I may have missed an opportunity by not wearing something Halloween themed to our presentation. And I am presenting from the village of Gambier in Central Ohio. And I would like to make a land acknowledgement, since I am actually at Kenyon College right now. Kenyon College acknowledges that the land on which we live, work, celebrate, and heal are the ancestral homelands of the Miami, the Lenape, the Wendat, and the Shawnee peoples, among others. The disputed Treaty of Greenville from 1795 and the forced removal of indigenous peoples from this region allowed for the founding of the college in the early 1800s. As a community, we're committed to confronting this dark past while also embracing through education and outreach the many indigenous communities that thrive in Ohio. So I will turn it over to my co-presenter.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I'm Indu, my pronouns are she, her. I'm just gonna give you a visual description of myself first. I am in my 30s, I'm of South Asian descent. I have black hair, shoulder length, brown eyes. I wear glasses, and today I'm wearing a white blouse. A little bit, before I continue and tell you a little bit about me, I just want to give a land acknowledgement. I speak to you today from Toronto, or Toronto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. A little bit about me. I completed my post-graduation in 2012 in history, and I returned to education in the fall of 2020. I just graduated from Humboldt College's Arts Administration and Cultural Management program. In fact, I just received my graduate certificate this morning. Part of the course was a 420-hour requirement, 420 hours of internship spread out over 2 semesters. I completed 420 hours in the form of 4 internships over the last 6 months, one of which translated into a part-time job, and the other one in the form of a contract gig. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. Over to you, Caroline.
All right, well, I think we should dig right into internships. This is kind of a cool presentation, if you ask me, because we've got like the dynamic duo here of like intern supervisor and intern. So we get to see like success from both sides, because really you can get a lot of professional development from either way, really, if you think about it. So I just want to share a little plan for the session. So these are the kind of things that we're going to do as we go through our hour together. So we're going to think about some ideas for internships. We're going to learn a little bit about internships as they exist now, since not all of us have experience in internships that are like Indu's. And so we're also going to learn about like internship types and general categories as you start thinking about what your program will do. We're also going to think about project-based learning because a lot of the new internship characteristics really pull from this, this model. We're going to learn about how to plan for success by being ready for a bumpy road, possibly. We're going to think about some examples, and then we're going to circle back maybe to some back and forth, some ideas that you generate and then we help flesh out. So, and then we'll have time for questions and comments. So that's what we're going to do today. All right, so we do have a Google Doc that we've set up just in case anybody wants to share what they're thinking about as far as projects. So feel free to add your info in here. Don't feel like you have to. You can also share in the chat or share verbally if you'd like. I'm going to put the Google Doc info in the chat so everyone can see that. And then, you know, just think about what you are doing in your work. Consider different projects you've always wanted to tackle but have never had the time. Think about those big cross-departmental projects that are hard to get going. Having a dedicated person on that project is sometimes the way to kickstart it. And also internship projects are a great way to do some rapid prototyping with new and different projects that you'd really like to roll out at your institution, but you want to make sure there's a proof of concept before you go in a really big push. So next slide. And feel free to add anything in there at any time. You don't have to do it now, but as things come to you later, you can do it then as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Indu, who's going to let us know about some of her recent experiences.
So I'm guessing it's been a while since some of you were interns. Let's just take a look at what it looks like right now. So it's no longer just taking coffee orders or making copies or just passive observation. Nowadays, most college courses come with internship requirements as part of the course credits. And it's quite common for organizations to team up with educational institutions. It turns out to be mutually beneficial for them as well as the interns and students. So my first internship as part of this course was with Lakeshore Grounds Interpretive Center, which is a fantastic local museum. Was part of Humber College and is associated with the campus as well. So that was a great experience, and it was a great way to kind of put what I've been learning, learning in classes into actual tangible work. So accumulating experience through internships, it's become a currency of sorts to pave the way for the next steps in your career. And it's like I said, it's a great way to put to use what you're learning in a real world setting with real responsibilities and targets. But there's also a little bit of leeway for error because it's still a learning experience. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with amazing supervisors who've mentored me well. Shout out to Victoria, if she's here today. She encouraged me to be part of this conference. So yeah, that's a great example of how internships really work out. And internships are also useful for smaller organizations, testing out larger teams, a bigger project, and to see how work can expand in what direction, and sort of like a beta testing for new things, for bigger things. So we did a short survey and just to see what internships looked like in the past year. Our sample size was about 20 participants aged between 20 to 53. So newcomers, college, freshers, juniors, returning students like myself over the age of 30, a pretty diverse bunch from visual arts, museums, film and television, music, and theater backgrounds. And all 20 participants had to have completed internships in the last year. anywhere between 1 to 4, and the hours put in range between 5 to 40 hours per week, depending upon the course layout and the requirements, from anywhere between 8 to 16 weeks. In my case, for the first, the internship, I worked around 11 hours for, I believe it was 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. And to complete the remaining hours, I worked up to 30 hours a week for another 12 weeks. So that's what it looked like in the past year. A quick look at some stats. So based on the information given to us by survey participants, you can see that a good chunk of internships were paid. Some students had a bit of both, unpaid and paid. Also, considering the pandemic, there was also a big chunk of it being virtual and a hybrid. These pie charts don't coincide, but they most certainly correlate, because you can see that the trend is towards paid and a hybrid, paid and hybrid kind of internship. And I think that really works out and opens up more opportunities. Like in my case, I was also able to do an internship with a smaller museum in Alberta, which wouldn't have been possible had it, if it weren't virtual. So there's a lot happening here, and it's a lot of possibilities and opportunities to be explored here. So a look at what skills internships have helped us with. Okay, so as you can see, a wide range of hard skills, from technical skills to technological, digital and virtual, to research and administrative. In my case, I learned how to use a virtual exhibition platform called Kunstmatrix. I helped curate and design an exhibit with over 80 plus participants, which was really exciting and very fun. At the same time, we had a smaller version of that exhibit with pandemic rules in place on site. So I did a little bit of hands-on in virtually as well as in person. So that was interesting. Also back-end website development, enough research and content creation skills, a lot of that. So basically the 4 internships covered a wide range of these skills. And of course, soft skills. It wasn't easy balancing 3 internships at the same time. So a lot of time management, a lot of deadlines to be met, making sure communication is top notch, everything is put out there clearly. So that's a general look at what fellow participants as well as myself, what we've learned over our internships. And okay, what do interns have to say? Of course, the positives being you're able to network, hands-on experience, you go out there in the real world, you're trying out what you've learned. That's great. Some of us have been very fortunate to have great mentorship, to be guided and supported even after the internships have gotten over. The not so great part, of course, is unpaid internships. It still happens, but it's a huge obstacle, because students and interns also have to pay bills. We got fees to pay, college loans. But to a more specific thing, a feedback or a common comment that I've received from other classmates and interns is that sometimes internships can be really vague. Without a specific project or outlined, or your duties and the role that you play that's not outlined well. It's unclear, so you're not sure what responsibility you have, what you're supposed to do, and it's complicated further, especially in a virtual setting. So you don't meet your supervisor face-to-face every day. Instead, it could be a weekly meeting, sometimes not more than 20 minutes. It leaves a lot of things unsure, uncertain. So not really sure where you're headed that way or what you're learning in that experience. Disconnected communication. Sometimes you're not sure who the supervisor is, what the chain of command is, who you should be reporting to for certain tasks. another complication because of the past pandemic setting has been the inability to socialize, properly, because especially in the arts and culture industry, socializing and networking is such a huge part of career development. And virtually, there's only so much that you can achieve. It's not organic as it would be in person. And so what would interns like in terms of an internship? Well, a reliable, tried and tested structure, project-based. So it's good to be part of an organization where there's a template in place, so the details of the project can change and it is easily adaptable, with room for the intern to sort of customize, in the sense that I remember in one of my internships at the first meeting, it was like, this is what you have to do, but also what would you like to add to it so that you can build on your portfolio, which I felt was a great way to kickstart an internship and learn so much as I went through it. Another requirement I would say would be to have reviews and assessment from at the start, the middle, and the end. Because halfway through, if you feel like you're not on the right track and you speak to your supervisor and they do an assessment and you see how you can, alter it and, tweak it a little bit, and then you're back on track. So that's a great way to, again, have a better internship experience. And of course, more internships built to accommodate more equity, diversity, and inclusivity mandates for BIPOC, LGBTQ+, and even older students like myself. Basically, what we're trying to say is that internships should be designed keeping in mind that the world is changing. It's not just the stereotypical fresh out of college 20-year-old who's looking for internships now. Several people are looking for mid-career changes, taking up education after a break, sometimes shifting their niche. So it's always good to keep all those nuances in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Indu has really set out how expansive the internship kind of marketplace is right now, and how paid internships and project-based internships are starting to, in a way, replace some of those entry-level positions that we've always had as a stepping stone in kind of the museum world. And so if, as people in museum tech and as, people working in museums, we can make that transition for those who need equity, inclusion, diversity, who need a little support. We can make that easier just by planning our internships and being really mindful of what we're putting in place. So if we kind of condense all of that down into sort of different types of internships that you can choose from, essentially like a menu, you have the compensation piece, which is, I think, very important to equity, and making available, if we want to have a diverse workforce, we have to kind of help that along and do our part. And this is one of those real things that you can actually take an action, instead of just talking the talk, you can walk the walk. So you can pay those interns for their work and make sure that they know they're valued in that way. The different internships, I mean, we're talking about all the way from high school students to, like Indu said, postgraduate level professionals who are looking for a second career. Oftentimes internships now we're looking at like a semester long or a summer internship, something that's at least 6 weeks, all the way to a year-long session. And then also when you're planning as a planner of an internship program, you can plan for an ongoing series of internships, or you can plan for a group of interns to come in together and work collaboratively, or a single intern working on one project with you kind of one-on-one. So, and then as Indu said, the work focus is much more of discrete project instead of just sort of whatever comes up in the office. So that puts an onus on supervisors and professionals to really plan out the experience that you want your interns to have. So we can go to the next slide. All right, so one thing that'll help us a lot with our planning is project-based learning. And I think that project-based learning can inform and help you create a lot of the things that Indu has mentioned that interns are really looking for in a quality internship program. So project-based learning is a methodology that was actually developed for K through 12 students. And it was centered around the idea that a project can give students something to have pointed and sustained effort in investigation and responding to real world questions and concerns over an end-to-end experience. So it's almost actually like an internship for little students. So we can flip that back into our professional work and really make sure that the internship programs that we're working on and the projects that we're assigning to interns actually have that start to finish experience, that they're built on the expectation that the work they're doing is going to be public facing, and that they're actually going to have to work out some concerns and make choices on their own. So it really actually creates a sense of agency and ownership within the internship experience. And it actually does allow for some of that flexibility that Indu said. I mean, it seems very concrete in that you're locked into a certain project, but actually, if you keep up with this methodology, it allows for kind of like mid-project twists and turns as research and investigation changes. So we can move on to the next slide. All right, so sounds like a great model, right? but there are some limitations and some things that you need to keep in mind if you do want to apply this model to an internship at your institution. These project-based learning models are really meant to give students and interns agency. So that means that sometimes they're going to make decisions that you wouldn't make. But when you think about it, you are in a different place in your career than your intern is, whether they're going to go into museum tech or whether they're going to go into another type of cultural institution or whether they're going to go on to completely different work in their lives. They need the ability to try it out. And that's actually something that's really hard to do. And it's actually one of those things that you learn and that makes you a better supervisor, is that you need to prepare, you need to have meetings, and you need to have constant communication. So this is something that you're going to have to put effort into. It's going to make the workload a little bigger for you, but it's also going to really enrich your experience and your intern's experience. And I think this really moves into the really hard stuff, is to deal with the resisting the temptation to just fix it. Because it really is this sense of discomfort, especially if you can see something that you know maybe isn't going to work out. But it's really important to let your intern learn that as they're going through their experience. So I think Indu can actually talk to that a little bit from her own experience in internships.
Sure, yeah. So as part of one of my internships, my role was required that I write exhibit and panel text for a museum. And it's difficult when you come from an academic background sometimes to condense and make the language more accessible and easy to read. And I kept getting stuck at that, but my supervisor refused to, give me the easy way out and just said that, hey, okay, fine. You know what? You've got the stuff. Let me edit it out for you. No, she insisted that I take a week and actually sit down and get to it myself, because that's the only way I learn. And I mean, it was something that she could have done in 30 minutes or an hour, but she gave me that time to learn and make my mistakes and learn from that. And I think that that was really helpful and something that I will keep with me and, use in my next experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's such a generous thing, right? Because of that discomfort level, and she could have just said, oh yeah, like you said, rewritten that in 30 minutes, but it was important to let you have that experience, to wait it out and let things play out. So I just think that that is lovely. I try to live up to that as much as I can, but it is a battle. So all right, we can move on. Okay, so maybe we've convinced you that, that you want to start a new internship program, or you want to reimagine an existing one, or maybe you've been given an internship program, or if you're at a large institution, someone has informed you that you will have a summer intern. And so any of these means that you may be just starting out and you need a place to start. And I'm sure you've gathered from our conversation so far that this is a huge and complex process, and it's always changing because it's a collaboration. And so you can start in a lot of different places. So I wanted to kind of give everybody some ideas about where they can start. So one of the best things you can do is do something like come to this session, or talk to someone in your institution, or maybe someone in your community. So starting conversations ahead of time and learning from those around you, it seems kind of like a, well, of course I would do that. But sometimes it's hard to start that conversation. But after it does start, I'm sure that you'll learn a lot, because different institutions and different departments, different professionals will administer internships in a different way. And then of course, as we said, it's a collaboration. So when you're working with an intern, things will kind of progress in a different way. So lean on those around you, including, see, I'm embedded in a higher ed institution, but local colleges and universities usually have huge internship programs, and they support internships all around the community. So they may actually have a structure in place that you can then use to jumpstart your own program. Then, there's also things like very concrete things. If you like to start in a very concrete place, like, do you have a location for an intern to work in your building? Do you have computers? Do you have extra software licenses? These may be things that you're going to have to build into a budget that you will need to have in place long before you actually have your intern hired and ready to go. You can do training sessions. This is a lot of leadership training. Having an intern is learning how to be a supervisor. And that can take you to the next step in your progression as a professional. And then of course, there are going to be a lot of documents that are going to need to exist when you're ready to get started. And of course, these will go through many iterations and drafts, but there are support documentation like timelines, job descriptions, paperwork for partners. If you do partner with a university or college, they may require site visits, they may require descriptions, they may require you speak to a professor or something like that. So be ready for all of that stuff. All right, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so we wanted to preload with some examples of tech internships that Indu and I have either worked on ourselves or helped supervise or been in contact or done in some way. So there's lots of different end-to-end projects that you can institute. Things like podcasts, that's a good one to start with. Especially if you're trying to find something that doesn't have a large chunk of training that comes in the very beginning, because you're going to need to train your interns depending on their level of comfort on different tasks and different pieces of software and all that. So maybe something like editing a artist talk or cleaning up the audio in a presentation by a musical group or dance group is not a place to start as far as a project-based learning internship project. That might have too much training involved for whatever time period you're looking at. However, I think that could also be a really great learning experience if you make sure it's something accessible, maybe an audio guide. Do a little research and see what kind of tools, very accessible tools, are available. Maybe your institution has always wanted to do an audio guide but never had time, right? That happens a lot. Interpretive materials tend to kind of fall by the wayside sometimes, and we're getting an exhibition up, at least in the art museums I've worked at. So this is a great way to support your visitors and have something really interesting for your student interns or graduate interns to do. So social media campaigns, another excellent thing. Personally, I did an art library. That's from my old school internship as a information professional. So I did organize an art library, and that was a great internship for me. But there's all kinds of things that you could try out. So what were some of your internships? You shared one experience, but you've had many. So what were some of the other things that you worked on?
So one of my internships required that I come up with a topic for an exhibit, and the mandate was that it had to be based on the neighborhood the organization was situated in. So that was challenging because it's a tiny geographical area, and while they did have a particular site in mind, researching and coming up with innovative ways to talk about that little place, that was challenging. But the best part was that they gave me the freedom to come up with a timeline that would work for me, and we would have structured meetings and discussion sessions and bounce ideas off each other. And even though it was all virtual, that translated into a really great internship experience, as well as a good way to kickstart a project in this field. Yeah, that was one of my experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love the collaborative nature of the planning that went on initially, where you kind of learn together, like where you're going, because you're not always going to know. So yeah, and I think that gives a lot of freedom, and that's a little scary sometimes for both people.
Because
right?
Especially when there's like a deadline involved, and both parties have to show that this particular target has been achieved. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I think that museums by sort of definition are really allergic to failure. But tech is built on failure. So there's this real tension, between trying out new projects and not working out, but learning a whole lot about what possibly would work instead. And then, having to talk to leadership and saying, oh, I'm sorry, this XYZ guide to whatever is not ready. We were hoping we would get there, and it's just not ready to go. So I think that there's a lot of trust there that happens, and you've got to build that. And one of those ways is showing the really great outcomes for your interns. So I think you've had a really great outcome, obviously, because you've been hired by one of your sites. I mean, I don't know if a higher compliment that could come.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the different kinds of, I had diverse internship experience because each internship was a different kind of role. And it's been great. Like I said, I mentioned Victoria, who's here right now. She mentored me, and she pushed me out of my comfort zone to apply for this particular conference. So if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be here. So that's the kind of experience interns are looking for. That little push out of your comfort zone is required, and the trust that comes with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, let's move on. We're getting close to question and answer time, work together time. So we have some ideas maybe to apply our knowledge to, or we can, have some question and answer session. We're here to be your resources. So what you want to do?
So we can take some questions at this time, or Caroline, do you want to run through the resources and show the examples? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we can run through. We've got a list of resources because you can't go through all of this in 1 hour. So these are the session takeaways that we're hoping you kind of get an idea about new internships, what's happening, where you can go with project-based learning, how you can plan for success, and kind of deal with that anxiety, and then where to go for more information. And I just saw a question come up in the chat. Yes, we will be sharing slides. We had a question about if we're sharing slides. So we have some slides up currently in, I think Sketch is what we're using. And so we will update them with the new slides with all of the links to the materials. And I think Allison has a question.
Thanks, Caroline. I do. This is a really helpful presentation. I'm actually here because I have an internship starting in the winter, but I need to prep for it now, of course. And it's sort of a situation where it's come to us. I've been told I'm getting a student from the academic institution we're connected with. So it's a public history program placement. So students do it for credit. And in my institution, we've had students from this program before, and there's always a bottleneck where we try to do project-based learning as much as possible. And I'm the exhibitions and education coordinator. And this is an education-focused placement. But the bottleneck is typically that it's very difficult to get the work of that student's placement available online, because we have one website coordinator, and I work for a government institution. So approvals and translation into French, because I'm in Toronto, is not possible in a timely fashion. So in the 6 months or 4 months that I have a student doing a placement with us, they're not actually able to see the fruits of their labor go up onto our website and get that satisfaction of the project being presented to the public or do any evaluation. So I'm wondering, what would your advice be to really to sort of offer some sort of closure, or make the student, if possible, kind of feel a sense of accomplishment, where I can't offer that really visible sense of accomplishment of having it be available to the public at the end of their placement. In place of that, what would you suggest?
Yeah, that's really difficult, right? What we've had similar problems, but in a little different fashion. Like we've had interns work on publications, and the publication requirements back those projects up as well. So I totally feel your pain on that, because you really do need that that kind of coming out, that presentation. And so actually that's how we've dealt with it. We've had presentations of different works, either in the gallery or online or through blog posts and social media. So if the more standardized, like you said, like having it on, on the website is not available, then we've actually brought students back to talk about their work, or to do a presentation like a gallery talk almost, to explain a little bit about their process and what they did. And then that allows them to have something on their portfolio. Because yeah, that's really hard. They need something to kind of say about what they've been doing. So usually that end cap works really well. And then using that's kind of part of the evaluation at the end. So then they are able to reflect, and then you hope, fingers crossed, that things get published later. So that's one way to deal with that really difficult situation. Yeah. So I hope I answered that. That's your question. All right. Are there any other questions? Anybody have a difficult situation? Internship ninjas here can help. No. Well, we can talk a little bit about resources. There's a lot of really good resources out there, different guides to starting a DEAI supporting internship program, talks, documentation sources, how to develop your learning objectives based on where your maybe interns are coming from. So if they're like public history and they need to learn certain objectives, then how to build that into your internship program and then actually achieve those. The employer's guide to building an internship is actually really good and very easy and very approachable. Let's see, I did share our internship handbook from the Guns Gallery. So it's a short document, but it does have a job description at the very end, which is not super detailed. It doesn't really have to be for us because we have interns working in like 7 different teams doing different items and projects around the gallery. So there's a lot of flexibility, and they kind of self-identify as, I want to work on XYZ team. So it's very open. And then we also have a template for a very simple project timeline that Indu shared from one of her experiences. And this was a really nice piece because you can talk about this if you like, Indu, but it was another one of those collaborative sort of experiences.
Yeah, what I like the best about this is it was not a complicated Excel sheet. It was simply like a date, what we want to achieve and what we have, and any other comments that have to be added or anything such as that. So it was very basic layout, but it was super helpful because to go by that with your weekly check-in to see if you're on track, what has to be changed. So it doesn't have to be something that is super technical or complex. Just something basic like this really helps interns stay on track.
Mm-hmm. And I really liked how it kind of set up like how, that the initial part of the internship was going to be training and onboarding and kind of research. And then the actual project sort of content production kind of comes in the middle, along with these kind of touch moments where you have meetings with your supervisor and you really check in a lot. And I think that's important when you're working on a project like this, because like we've said, you may need to change direction, and you don't want to be in a situation where you feel like you're in a fix-it moment. So the way to deal with that is to get things identified as quickly as possible so that you can then talk it out and work it out that way, instead of, just saying, oh, well, this audio guide is not what we were looking for, and so it just goes into cold storage, which means that nobody gets a lot out of it at all. So yeah. All right. Are there any other questions? Any other things we can help you guys with? I've really enjoyed this time together. I'm glad that you guys were able to attend. I know it's really hard since we're all still at work. work. So Indu's really excited to be at work right now. Congratulations again.
Thank you very much. And this is a great way to actually kickstart my real world experience. So yeah, thank you so much for this.
Yeah. We've gotten very meta. We've had, this is like learning on everybody's learning right now. Can feel it. So all right, well, yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, it seems like we maybe finished a little bit early. So
no, we're right on time actually.
Are we? Wow.
Not bad.
Hey, look at that. See, sometimes things work out accidentally. Yeah.
So, Caroline, do you want to tell them where the slides will be available? Is it going to be sent to them, or?
Yes, I will put the slides on the Sched listing for this session on the MCN virtual conference Sched. I'll also tweet them out on my Twitter, my very quiet Twitter account. So if anybody needs to get to them that way, or wants to share them, you can grab them there too. So I think it's at Colbert 13, see Colbert 13. So somewhere on Sched too.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. We really appreciate this. This is
great. Yeah, thanks everybody. I hope we helped you out. So